Hey everybody, it's Tracy Morreau here. I have a great little Christmas craft for you today. You're going to love this. I saw this on Pinterest, and actually saw a variety of them on Pinterest, and it reminded me that we used to make these when we were kids. They're simple little vintage style sleds, and they're just made with popsicle sticks. I mean, we're right back to gluing popsicle sticks together. I mean, it's the simplest craft, and you can really make them look great with some really simple techniques. So I'd like to show you how to do these. And I found a few shortcuts to make it a little easier because working with these little small things can be a little problematic. This is the process that I used. So you first need to collect some supplies up for these. And what you need is some 2.5-inch popsicle sticks. I got a bag of about 100 of these at Michael's. They were like $3 or $4. They were not expensive, and you can make a lot of little sleds out of 100 little popsicle sticks. So you need the 2.5-inch, and then you also need the standard size popsicle sticks. Pretty straightforward. You're going to need a little bit of wood glue, some acrylic paint, some glitter, a glue gun, and I used this wonderful baker's twine, this vintage style baker's twine. I have this in about 10 or 12 different colors, but I wanted to keep that vintage look, so I stuck with the red and white. It's very festive looking, so we have that. You can use stencils to decorate your sleds, or you can use little items that you can glue on. In this particular case, I found these at Hobby Lobby. This was in the Christmas crafts section of the store. They come with a box, and there's about 48 of these little fellows in here. Very inexpensive. I think the whole box was about $5. It wasn't very expensive. And to get them ready, I simply just sprayed them with a little bit of thinned white paint in a spritzer. I didn't need them to be fully opaque or all that fancy, so I just made sure that they looked a bit white. When they were dry, I brushed them with a little bit of decoupage and sprinkled them with glitter and kept it at that. Something really, really simple. To get started, I had initially done these using a small piece of cardstock and glued it onto the back of 4 little things, and it was, although it worked, it was a little problematic. It was difficult to do. I was dropping things, they weren't sticking, it was just a pain. So instead, I cut about a 10-inch strip of cardstock, and I brushed it with wood glue, and then I simply arranged the small 2.5-inch popsicle sticks into groups of 4, keeping one roughly centered, and then the 2 I extended about a 1/2 inch past the one on the outside, so that I got that sort of curved front and the curved back. And then I set those aside to dry. Now, instead of immediately cutting them apart with a pair of scissors, I figured it would be much simpler to base coat them while they were still attached to this, which I did. I painted them with a little bit of thinned country red, which is just an Americana color. I thinned that out and brushed it on. I didn't worry too much about getting it opaque because I'm going to distress these anyway. So it was this easy. I take a little of that thinned country red and just brushed it over top. Almost like a stain, but a little more opaque than a stain. And it was much simpler to do it this way by having it taped or glued to this strip of paper. It was much simpler to keep control of it, and it was so much easier to paint these things. So neatness doesn't really count. You're not worried too much about getting all of the edges, because I'm going to antique these afterwards with a little bit of gel stain, and they're going to be distressed, so I'm not too worried about getting them utterly perfect. They'll have a more vintage look if they're not. So it was really this simple. So that takes care of the seat portion of the sled, which is this sled back here. So I'll set these aside to dry, and while those are drying, we're going to do the same thing to these crossbars. These are the bits that are on this sled right here. So I'm going to do the same thing to those Again, I'm not too worried about the neatness portion of this because I'm going to distress them. So, oops. So a quick coat of the red on each of those little crossbars. And you're ready to go. So then you also need, for each of these sleds, you need runners. So you're going to take 2 of the large popsicle sticks for each sled, the standard size popsicle sticks. And I took some thin asphaltum, or you can do it with a little bit of gel stain, and I stained both sides of these runners. So I did one side first and then set it aside to dry, and then I did the other side. Just like that. So you need 2 of these for each sled. And this is about the most tedious part of this, is staining these little bits. I like that sort of vintage antique-y look, and this is an easy way to get it, is just by simply staining these popsicle sticks. And I'll do one more. And then once you have all of these stained and dried, you're going to distress a little bit. And how much you do is entirely up to you, but these are going to be pretty straightforward. Because towards the end I do, you know. All right, so quickly do the other side, just so that they're done. I'm using a Dynasty foliage brush to do this. I really like these brushes. They're great for a bunch of things. So there's my stick. Got my sled runners almost done. Look how easy this is. Neatness doesn't count when it comes to this part. They're going to look old and distressed anyway, so. All right, so we have our runners done. Now you're going to distress your seat backs while those are drying. So you're going to take a little bit of sanding film. I use this 3M P150. It's like a sheet, but it's very flexible. And then I'm just going to go at my little sled backs and sand through the wood in a few places, or through the paint in a few places, just to age these a little bit. It also opens up the wood so that the next step that we do over this will take that color. How fun is this? Now, I did these in a traditional red. I kept it to a very traditional color, but there is nothing in the rules that says you have to do them in a traditional color. I did a couple in, this one was done with Bahama Blue, and then I antiqued it the same way that I'm going to antique these. And then I did this one with a little bit of green tea, I think is the color, or sea glass. It's a pale, soft green, and antiqued it, and it took on a different look as well. So feel free to play with whatever colors you want. But I kind of liked this more traditional color palette for these. I thought it was fun. So now that they're distressed, again, I'm going to leave them on this paper for the time being because it's much easier to handle all these surfaces when they're glued together like this than when they're separated. So I'm back to using the asphaltum, and I've thinned this out a little bit so that it's not too strong. And I just brush over top of that red. And this is where I pay attention to the edges where the paint didn't catch the first time. And just apply that color over top of the red. It stays nice and warm, and it gives it a vintagey feel. And this is where you can touch up all of those little areas where there was no paint before. If you're using a gel stain, then you just brush some on and then wipe it off. So a little bit of thin asphaltum. Get into all those edges so that you get good coverage. And if you want to age these even more, take a little bit of soft black and just float the edges of these. They'd be really pretty. I really like this look. So now I have my all my sled backs done. I'm going to do the same distressing technique to the crossbar, just to open that up a little bit. And as soon as that's done, I'm going to go over the crossbar with the same thin dish Fulton, just to age it. So now we have our crossbars. Easy peasy. I mean, this is so simple. Okay, so now we have our crossbars done. I'm going to clean out that foliage brush. Now I'm going to spatter my my little sleds. I've taken a little bit of warm white paint and I'm going to spatter my sled backs, the seat on the sled, and the crossbar. And then I'm going to repeat that with a little bit of lamp black. Thin that out and spatter it. A little fly specking. Just gives it a little more age. Just a little bit. Nice and light. Nothing over the top. So now that those are, they're painted, distressed, a little bit of staining or antiquing added to them. We've spattered them with a little bit of warm white and we spattered them with a little bit of black. And now we're ready to put these little sleds together. And they're really, really simple. The neat part is that because we use this cardstock, you're going to take your pair of decoupage scissors or something with a nice sharp point, and you're going to cut the paper off. Just like that. So make sure you get close to the edge and cut off the paper. Just like so. So now we have these great little sled backs. Look at that. Now, if you happen to have a spot that you're not happy with, if it sticks out too far, the paper didn't come off all that easily, just turn it upside down and sand away the paper with a nail file. Works really, really well. If you don't like the raw back, there's nothing to stop you from taking a little bit of your gel stain or your thin dish Fulton and going over the back of these. It's not going to hurt the cardstock, but it'll give this a nice finished look. So I just take a little bit of that gel stain or the thin dish Fulton and go over the back of the sled. Just gives it a nice finished appearance. It doesn't hurt that cardstock any. So that's simple. So we'll just add a little stain or a little asphaltum, thin asphaltum to the back, just to give it a nice finished appearance. There. So now we have our sleds, our little seat for the sleds are done. And we have our things. So now we have to put them together, and they're really, really simple. So we're going to flip over our sled so that you see the cardstock side. And this is where your glue gun comes in handy. So you're going to have your runners at the ready. Put a line of glue, hot glue, down one side of the sled, and then make sure that it's roughly centered, but then you want about 1/2 inch sticking out at the back end, like so. And then repeat that down the other side of the sled. Remember, you need about 1/2 inch sticking out past the back end of this sled so that the runners stick out. Then you can flip it over. Look how cute. And you're going to put about 1/2 inch in from the end on the longest part. You're going to put a little dab of glue. And this is where you glue your crossbar. And voila, a little vintage sled. So to decorate this, you can glue those little wooden snowflakes on, which is what I'm going to do. Or You can stencil it, or you could add greenery, or you could even glue pictures of the kids or something like that on it. I mean, the possibilities are endless. But I'm going to use a snowflake, so I'm going to put a little dab of hot glue on the back of the snowflake. And I'm going to roughly center it on the back of the sled. And I have these wonderful little gems here. They're, again, you can get these at any craft store or dollar store or what have you. And I just glue sparkly little gem in the center of the snowflake. Then you're going to add the little drawstring, or the rope that pulls the sled, or in this case is going to hang the ornament. And it's quite simple. Just cut about 6 or 8 inches of this baker's twine. And I'm going to turn my ornament over. And on the back of the crossbar on each side, I'm going to place my baker's twine, just the end, oops, like so. And I'm going to do the same on the other side. And then just give it a few minutes to set up. And voila. You have a great little vintage sled. Now, if you wanted to, you could spray this with a little bit of varnish and apply even more glitter if you wanted to. I really like the more vintage feel of this. They're very simple and very pretty. You can dress them up quite a bit. If you really wanted to make them look quite vintage, you can use a small drill and drill holes in the crossbar and then tie the baker's twine to that is another option. So there are tons of ways to dress these up with jingle bells, little bits of greenery, stenciling, family photos, whatever you wanted to do. These are so much fun to do. They are so simple, and I think they make a great little ornament. Hopefully the members of my family that are getting these at a family event this weekend will feel the same way. Thank you for joining me. This was a lot of fun. Hope to see you again soon.